video, we will be learning how to add and subtract decimals. So this is super easy as long as you remember the most important fact, the magical decimal line. So today our magical decimal line is going to be a sunshine. Your magical decimal line should be a piece or a colored pencil, any color you want as long as you have it. But I'm going to make mine a sunshine today. So let's go ahead and start off. Our first problem is going to be 3 5/10. Let's see if I can make that a little bit darker. Plus 12 47/100. So let's go ahead and first things first, I'm going to draw my magical decimal line. Just a line going down. Now the reason we draw that magical decimal line, trying to make that a little bit bigger, not going to happen today, is because we want to line up our decimals on it. So as you can see, I have a decimal here. So I'm going to say 3 5/10. That decimal must be on the magical decimal line. And then over here, I've got 12 47/100. So I'm going to put my magical decimal on my magical decimal line. I'm going to write my 47/100 and my 12 in front of it. Now, the most important thing is to keep it really neatly lined up. So first things first is to line up those decimals. Second thing is to fill in any zeros where needed. So as you can see, I have a blank spot up here, so I'm going to fill in a 0. I could also fill in a 0 over here if I wanted to as well. Now all you have to do is add. 0 plus 7 is 7. 5 plus 4 is 9. Decimal goes on the magical decimal line. 3 plus 2 is 5. 0 plus 1 is 1. So I know that 3 5/10 plus 12 47/100 equals 15 97/100. Super, super easy. I'm going to have you try the next one. So let's go ahead and scoot it down. Your next one is 5 8/10 plus 4 278 thousandths. Don't forget to use your colored pencil as your magical decimal line, and let's go ahead and get started. For this one, I hope you drew your magical decimal line. And then I hope we lined up our decimals on the decimal line. We've got 5 8/10. And then we've got 4 278 thousandths. Next step is always to fill in your gaps with zeros. So we have a gap here and a gap here. We put our zeros. Now I know that 0 plus 8 is 8. 0 plus 7 is 7. 8 plus 2 is 10. Put down my 0, carry my 1. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Put our decimal on the magical decimal line, and we know our answer was 10 78 thousandths. I think you've got a really good grip on that adding. So let's jump on to subtracting. We're going to do the first one together, and first things first, of course, is to draw that magical decimal line, and then we'll talk about our problem. For this one, we've got 15 853 thousandths minus 3 1/10. Long number first there. So I've got 15 853 thousandths minus 3 1/10. So I'm going to go ahead and add my zeros in on my gap. So it's really 3 100 thousandths. Remember, that's exactly the same thing, though. We can always add zeros there. Now we just have to subtract. 3 minus 0 is 3. 5 minus 0 is 5. 8 minus 1 is 7. 5 minus 3 is 2. Oh, should have put a 0 there. And 1 minus 0 is 1. Add our decimal in, and we can see that our answer is 12 753 thousandths. Super easy, super easy. I'm going to have you do this next one on your own. I hope you are writing these in. We've got 12 3/10 minus 6 827 thousandths. So this one's going to get a little complicated. You have to remember to put your zeros in to fill the gaps. All right, go ahead and get started. For this one, drawing that magical, let's try this instead. Magical decimal line is now raindrops. That's totally cool. All right, I put it in as 12 3/10. I'll move my board up just a little bit. Minus 6 827 thousandths. So if you left it just like this, you would have 27 as your last two numbers here. But that would be wrong. you have to fill in your gaps with zeros. And you know you can't do 0 minus 7. So if you had 7 there as an answer, that is wrong. We have to go ahead and start borrowing. I'm going to borrow from my 3, make that a 2, make this a 10. Still need that, so make this a 9 and this a 10. I know that 10 minus 7 is 3, 9 minus 2 is 7. Can't do 2 minus 8, so I'm going to borrow from this 2, make it a 1, and make this a 12. 12 minus 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's 4. Bring down that decimal. Can't do 1 minus 6, makes this a 0, and this an 11. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, that is 5. So you should have gotten for 12 and 3/10 minus 6 and 827 thousandths, 5 and 473 thousandths. I'm going to try 2 more just as some quick review because there's something that we didn't do that I want to make sure we get in. Try 5 plus 1 and 54 hundredths. For this one, you should have drawn your magical decimal line just like always. We've got trees. And then put in your number. We've got 5. Uh-oh. Did you put your 5 where it belongs? Remember, on any whole number, you can add a decimal and a 0 to the end, and it's still the same number. 5 and 0/10 is the same as 5. So my 5 goes there with the decimal here. And then I've got 1 and 54 hundredths. Let's fill in those gaps with zeros and add it up. 0 plus 4 is 4. Oop. 0 plus 5 is 5. Bring down the decimal, 6. So 5 plus 1 and 54 hundredths is 6 and 54 hundredths. Let's try one more. That was pretty easy with addition, but when you have subtraction, it can get a little more complicated. For your subtraction, I want you to try 5 minus 1 and 54 hundredths. So now we know how to line it up correctly, but will you add your zeros in your gaps and subtract correctly? For this one, make your magical decimal line. And then you should have written 5 before the decimal line because pretend there's a decimal there. And then 1 and 54 hundredths. Add in those zeros to your gap, and now we can subtract. Borrow from the 5, make it a 4. Make this a 10. Borrow from that, make it a 9, and this a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 4 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. So our answer to 5, subtract minus 1 and 54 hundredths, is 3 and 55 hundredths. Make sure you put those zeros in your gaps because that's the most important thing when subtracting. When adding, a lot of time it doesn't really make a difference, but it's better to be in that habit to make sure we're doing it. Let's go ahead and get started on that classwork.